Hi everyone. Today's lesson is going to focus on rounding decimals to the nearer tenth. Now, the strategy that we're going to use today to round our decimals are number lines, and you'll see that I have two separate number lines here on the board. I have a vertical number line and I have a horizontal number line. You might find one type of number line easier to round with than the other, so I want to show you both examples. So the number that we're going to be working with today is 5 92/100. Now, it's important again to remember that we're going to be rounding our number to the near tenth. So the first thing that we want to do is identify what digit falls in the tenths place in the number 5 92/100. Once you have identified the digit that falls in the tenths place, which in this case would be the 9, now we can go ahead and start to create endpoints for our number lines so that we can see visually how our number is going to round to the nearer tenth. When you're creating a number line and you're thinking about what the nearer tenth would be, we know that we can always round down, and if we round down, our option would be to keep our number at 5 9/10. But if we want to round up, if we find that our number is actually closer to the higher endpoint on our number line, then we need to see what that higher endpoint is. So in this case, if I'm counting by tenths, if I have 5 9/10, I can't go up to 5 10/10. Instead, we would have to regroup that 1 over into the ones place and turn that 5 into a 6. So it would be 6 0/10. Now that we've identified what our two endpoints are, we can go ahead and plug them in on our number lines. For my vertical number line, I'm going to start off by just drawing 2 tick marks at each end for my endpoints. So at the bottom, I'm going to have my 5 9/10 because it has the lesser value, and I want my values as I go up on my number line to be higher. And my upper endpoint is going to be 6 0/10. I can repeat over here on my horizontal number line. On a horizontal number line, the values on the left are always going to have a lower digit than the numbers on the right. So my lower endpoint is going to come over here on the left-hand side, and my upper endpoint of 6 0/10 is going to come over here on the right-hand side. Now, I always find it helpful to find that midpoint on the number line as well. So then I need to think about what would come in between 5 9/10 and 6 0/10. So one thing that I think is helpful for me is looking at what digit I can put behind that 9 that doesn't change the value of that number. So in this case, I can put a 0 behind that 5 9/10 to turn it into 5 90/100. I haven't changed the value of the number, but now if I'm looking at 5 90/100 or 6, I know that 5 95/100 would be a good midpoint for my number line. So I can go ahead and mark that on each of my number lines. Now, you can see that I'm writing kind of large, and if I want to go ahead and put tick marks in between each one of my endpoints and midpoints, I can do that in order to further partition my number line. Some people find that very helpful. I do want to recommend that if you have larger writing, that you do not label each of those tick marks, because it can be cramped and difficult to read your number line. So for my number lines, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place 4 tick marks in between each of my endpoints and my midpoints, so that I know if I have 5 90/100, I would have 5 91/100, 5 92/100, 5 93/100, 5 94/100, and 5 95/100. I could continue up with 4 more tick marks for 5 96/100, 5 97/100, 5 98/100, and 5 95/100. Sorry, 5 99/100. I can repeat over here on my horizontal number line as well. Now, again, my goal is to determine which nearer tenth 5 92/100 rounds to. So now that I have my number line set up, I'm going to go ahead and identify the location of 5 92/100 on each of my number lines. Now because I have identified a midpoint of 5 and 95 hundredths, I can think and consider whether my number is going to fall in between 5 and 90 hundredths and 5 and 95 hundredths, or if it would fall between 5 and 95 hundredths and 6. Well, I know that 5 and 92 hundredths is going to fall in between 5 and 90 hundredths and 5 and 95 hundredths. And now I can go ahead and use my tick marks to help me identify the location of that number. So right here, I would have 5 and 92 hundredths. And over here on my horizontal number line, 5 and 92 hundredths would be 2 tick marks past 5 and 90 hundredths. Now that I can see where 5 and 92 hundredths is located on the number line, it's really easy for me to see that it's much closer to 5 and 90 hundredths than it is to 6 on each of my number lines. And that's what we're doing when we're rounding. We're looking to see which endpoint our point is located closest to, because that will help us determine if we need to round down or round up. So in this case, because I know that it's located closer to 5 and 90 hundredths, I could go ahead and write 5 and 90 hundredths. Now, because I'm rounding to the near 10th, I only need to write my number to the nearest tenths place. So because I know that 0 just acts as a placeholder and doesn't change the value of my number, I can eliminate the 0 and simply write my answer as 5 and 9/10. So if I'm looking at 5 and 92 hundredths, using the number lines, I can see that it rounds to 5 and 9/10.